Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today, I'm creating one of my first videos in a long time. I think it's been over a year. But this morning I woke up at 5 a.m. for my lift with just a burst of inspiration because I watched the Barbie movie yesterday, and who shouldn't feel inspired by that movie? What an incredible revolutionary film. Wow. No, but I mean I genuinely liked the movie. I think in the movie it was trying to do largely two things. One was create a comedy, which I think it accomplished really well. I thought it was a really funny movie. If you disagree, we can't really, you can't like argue about comedy. Comedy is very, very subjective. Um, but the other thing that I think it did fairly well was create, or the other goal that it had, that I do think it accomplished as well, was to create a female empowerment movie. Um, and I think it did that fairly well. There's a few problems, but I think even those problems, like a lot of it was done in good fun, where it was like more like comedic than like trying to actually um, do the thing that I'm talking about. But I do want to point that out because I want to use this movie as sort of a springboard to talk about gender dynamics and empowerment in general. But I guess to begin, just to like give the movie credit, I think it did the female empowerment thing very well. I think we're still in a world where men run a lot of institutions. It's getting better. I think women going to college at a higher rate are like going to college at a higher rate than men now. They're starting to move their way up in the world, but still, like the CEOs, the bosses are still home men. And there is like somewhat of a dismissive culture with the older generations. I think it's getting better with the younger. I don't know. I'm not the person to ask this question. But there is like a dismissive attitude that you can kind of notice with the older generations towards women. So I think it's good to empower women in this way and make them feel more confident. Additionally, I think it did a good job with the sort of self-image and Barbie as an ideal sort of rhetoric. It's sort of using Barbie as more like trying to add some realism to it, adding some like emotion, like fear of death, that sort of stuff that they talked about. So it's like this more accepting women as they are, but also like admiring what they can become. Like she also represents this ideal that women can strive towards, like women being bosses, women doing whatever career that they want, not feeling held down by a history where that wasn't really the case. So I think all of that was done in a pretty good way. So I did enjoy the female empowerment message, and I also love analyzing these like comedies super deeply because it feels kind of weird because I'm like, oh, I'm gonna be writing like I'm going on a long rant about a comedy movie. But I think there's always social implications in this type of thing. And when they're doing like a women's empowerment movement in a world where gender discussion and dynamics are a huge topic, I think, and a huge topic for debate, it's there's gonna be stuff that I think is important to look at. More so just than the comedy. I also don't want to come off like, oh, these jokes are so problematic. Please donate to my BIPOC trans GoFund. Like, no, I'm not trying to do that either. I get stuff as jokes. Okay, but I haven't even explained what I'm going to talk about yet. So let's talk about gender empowerment and relying on deprecation. Because that's the title of this video, or it's going to be something like that. I haven't actually written that title yet. I think often in this movie and in a lot of female empowerment in general, from things that I'll see on like Instagram or social media, female empowerment often comes at the cost of turning men into stereotypes. Like you can look at the depiction of Ken, I think is a good example. Just like a very clingy, immature, emotionally unstable character. And I think that can get a little bit demeaning. I don't think that reducing men to stereotypes is a good way to empower women. Like you don't need, this is something that my mom used to always say. It's like you shouldn't light your own you can't make your own candle brighter, your own light brighter by putting someone else's out. And I think ultimately the goal of feminism should be to raise everybody up, to make everybody better. So I think trying to demean men at the cost of, or in order to raise up women. It's not, I just think it's sort of a backwards tactic, but I understand it in the context of the movie, obviously. But there were a few things that did annoy me about the way that it's portrayed, like especially at the end, where Ken is kind of having like his emotional breakdown. It feels like at points in that the joke is that a man is being emotional, which I understand, like the whole like trauma dumping stereotype of like men will repress all their emotions and have these like big outbursts for women that they like, but it's still like the actual comedy of that scene is more how emotional he's getting and how like sad he's getting, and it's funny to see a man cry, essentially, which I think is not the best thing to promote, especially when like when a large goal of feminism and like gender movement should be to promote male emotions, to make men feel more comfortable expressing their emotions, rather than having it kind of be the butt of a joke in a movie. Yeah, I think oftentimes it is the case that male emotion is dismissed, and it's not only by men. I notice a lot of times women can be just as dismissive, but this is all anecdotal, so I can't like give you studies on this, but I do find that women can also be very dismissive of male emotions, and I think that's something that the movie didn't necessarily do well. So I think laughing at male emotions and kind of demeaning men down into certain stereotypes is not the way to properly do female empowerment. And it honestly, it kind of reminds me of the way that certain male empowerment movies work, male empowerment movements. That's what I'm trying to say. So, I mean, I don't know if I was even posting videos back when Andrew Tate became a phenomenon, but yeah, it was over a year ago. So I haven't talked about Andrew Tate at all on this channel, but I think Andrew Tate represents a very similar sort of thing in the opposite direction. And we can talk about the Red Pill movement as well, people like Sneeko or the Fresh and Fit podcast. And it's very much trying to raise men up by demeaning women. It's portraying women as entitled, unrealistic, immature, overly emotional, doing these street interviews or bringing women onto a podcast just to sort of portray them in a negative light. And I think male empowerment, they're trying to turn women into stereotypes to make men feel better about themselves. And I think women empowerment movements kind of do a similar thing. Like they see ways in which men are oppressing them. And men see ways in which women are impressing them, and like maybe impression's the wrong word for both of these, but like making them feel bad. And they have this very emotional response initially where they want to lash out, demean those men to make themselves feel better, to make themselves feel like, oh, these people being mean to me, like fuck them, they don't even matter anyways. Like these people oppressing me, it doesn't matter, they're worthless. And I see the value in that, but I think it ultimately promotes really bad gender division. Like, why can't we all be friends, you know? Why can't we all get along, sing Kumbaya? Why can't men and women just get along? What the heck? Like, I love women. What the okay. But yeah, I think one cause of this potentially is just bad relationships in the past. So a lot of times it feels like these movements are not, at times, I think there's different subsections of each movement. Like you can do men's empowerment without demeaning women, and you can do female empowerment without demeaning men. I've seen good like posts about like men's mental health day and like trying to promote that sort of stuff, which I think is good. And I think there's times when like male empowerment creators can say positive things about women as well. I see that more so with some of the new self-improvement channels coming up. But I also haven't watched too much of them, so I don't know how much. Like there's one that I watched that would say like you should learn how to compliment women by complimenting your mom, which is, I think, a significantly better way of approaching the gender dynamics problem and trying to improve men by teaching them like respect for women, rather than that women are like entitled and that yeah that sort of like manosphere stuff, that very like demeaning to women stuff, I don't enjoy. But I do think it's similar, a similar sort of, I do get a similar sort of vibe from some of the female empowerment stuff, because you can see like the portrayals of like, as I mentioned before, just like men as immature, dirty, emotionally unstable. Like there's the one part in the movie where they're mentioning like, oh, we have to go clean up. Like, I mean, there's truth behind every stereotype, but there's truth behind the male empowerment stereotypes too. It's not good to portray an entire gender like that. But let's go back, because I think I kind of went off the point that I was making before. I think a major cause of this is bad relationships. I think people, rather than trying to promote a social cause, they want to lash out because they've had bad relationships with people of the opposite gender. And sometimes it's fun to, it makes you feel empowered to sort of demean that person by saying like, yeah, this is just how men are, this is how women are. Like, oh, you had an ex who never cleaned their toilet, or you had a woman ex, a male ex who would never clean their toilet, or you had a female ex who was like overly emotional and always getting mad at you. Like it's these like toxic relationships. I think people attach these to their gender movements, to their gender empowerment movements, and to empower themselves, it feels like they have to almost fight back against whatever their exes were, which is kind of cringe, dude. Like, why? But, and it also I think it leads to a bit of a spiraling phenomenon, because as you start to lash out and demean the other gender in your social movement, it makes men less accepting of female empowerment. It makes women less accepting of male empowerment as well. Like, women did not like Andrew Tate, and a lot of men don't like these like very deprecating feminist movements. And it makes people turn into reactionaries. And I don't mean reactionary in like the cringe, like, oh, they're a conservative, so they're No, I mean literally, like, they're reacting to something in a harsh way just by hating that and moving to the opposite side. So seeing these sort of movements that empower one gender by deprecating the other one, or by demeaning the other one, it pushes people further into their camps and further away from their movements. Because if I see like a feminist movement that's saying men are immature or laughing, or that are laughing at men's emotions, like, I don't really want to be part of that feminist movement, because it doesn't empathize with me. It doesn't acknowledge the things that I care about, and it sort of treats me as less. And similar with women, like, that's why women don't like the red pill stuff. Yeah. So yeah, it generally feels like in a lot of these cases, it's just not really motivated by solving these problems. You just have a resentment for the opposite gender because you had a bad relationship in the past. Sorry, that's kind of how it is. But I think ultimately the solution to this is just empathy. We need to be willing to acknowledge the problems that the people of the other gender face, and just listen to what people say. And that goes for both sides. I think men need to be a lot more receptive of the issues that women face in society, because a lot of times they aren't. Like, a lot of times the first response by men to like body positivity or female empowerment or anything like that is just to hate and just say like, oh, like, I don't know, just like hate as an initial reaction. And a lot of times, like, the first response that women have to the male empowerment movements, or to when men have problems, is to just say like, oh, your problems aren't as bad as ours. You're not really oppressed by the patriarchy. The patriarchy runs both ways, dog. Things that harm women usually harm men in the opposite sort of direction. Like, we can take the dating app thing, for example. Women tend to get overwhelmed with matches, tons of messages, tons of like desperate, horny guys. But why are they desperate and horny? Because they're getting no matches. They're getting no bitches. They don't know how to talk to women because they never have done it. They've never done it in their lives. But women, they get overwhelmed and they don't want to date anymore, which is why women are more and more dropping out of the dating market. But that's a whole other topic of discussion. I guess to kind of jump off that too, I think men need to start being friends with women more. And stop trying to date all of your friends. It's weird. You're scaring the hoes, bro. Stop. Stop trying to date every single one of your friends. Just be friends with a woman. And I don't know. Like, if you get friend zoned, just accept that. Move on. You'll be fine. You'll find somebody else. You'll be fine. That type of stuff does get hard, though. And if you don't feel like you can handle it, I feel like you just got to cut that friendship off if you can't handle it. But yeah, I think men and women need to be friends more and just discuss and be open to empathizing with each other and discussing each other's problems. Because that's really how you learn about this sort of stuff. That's how you sort of get an idea of what other people are going through, is just by being friends with them, having conversations. Women tend to know a lot about how women work and what women want. So it's nice to be able to talk to them. But yeah, I don't know. I think I've had enough of the internet for today. I might go outside and go for a walk or something. And you should too. Get off your phone. Get off your phone. Bye.